How's it going, everyone? And welcome again to another episode of Animal Talk Podcast with me, Ryan Ferguson.
And me, Ayrton King.
How's it going, Ayrton? How are you?
It's going really well, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And we're doing another episode.
We are. Of course we are. Why would we not be?
Alrighty, what are we talking about today?
Well, today I thought we could talk about a topic that can sometimes be a little bit challenging, but is quite important when you're working in a zoo or an aquarium or in any industry. I always find when it comes to the animal care industry, we always forget a big component of what we do is working with other human beings, which can be very difficult. So I think the topic today is how to work in a team environment.
Yeah, that's a big one. We all have to work in a team environment, especially in our industry. And it's a very close-knit team. A lot of spaces are tight, and you're kind of in each other's faces all the time. And
all the time.
That can cause a little bit of conflict. So it's kind of understanding how to work in a team situation, as well as dealing with conflicts that could arise due to your close proximity to each other.
And, I think it's also, not only is it a very close-knit environment, but also it can be really, really stressful. I mean, we've talked about keeper burnout, for example. And imagine you already working in a close-knit environment, you're experiencing keeper burnout, and then you still have to deal with all these other human beings, some of which are possibly also experiencing keeper burnout. And it just seems to be a really bad recipe to put all that together. And when working with animals, it's not only can it be stressful, but there's sometimes a lot of long hours involved. And that just all seems to add to the many problems in a team environment. So, yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic and see what maybe advice we can come up with for our fellow keepers out there.
Yeah, good idea. So let's think about what is the perfect team? How would you describe, it's never perfect, but how would you describe a perfect-ish team? And then we can go from there and sort of break it up into what could go wrong.
I think my idea of a perfect team, when I think of a perfect team, I think of the word that comes to mind is balance. There needs to be a very good balance of work shared across the team. I think that is something that always brings up issues later on if that isn't, if the load isn't spread evenly across all the team members. And then also, if I think of a perfect team, I think of really good and clear communication in the sense of everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows where they are, where they need to be, where possibly their colleague is, and where they can help them.
Yeah, and where they're heading.
Exactly. They're all on the same road. They're all on the same journey, and they know the end point. They know the location that they need to get to.
Yeah, the way I sort of look at it, and it's been described to me in the past as how you work in a team, it's like being on an aeroplane. You can't have anything go wrong in an aeroplane. So you can't really have anything go wrong in a team because things start falling apart and start moving in the wrong direction. So you're not going to get anywhere on an aeroplane if you've only got one wing, because the one wing is not doing its job. So everybody's got to have clear jobs and what they need to do. And they've all got to understand what those jobs are getting the team to. How does their job make the team run to meet those goals at the end?
Yes, so I think when we talk about that, that perfect idea of a team, a really important component is communication. Because I think when communication isn't clear and the communication starts to break down, it tends to filter down through the team, and everybody starts to lose their own individual way from that initial path that the team is on. They stop seeing the end goal. They stop, feeling like they're part of one unit. that's working towards that end goal. So communication is really, really important.
Clear, concise communication is very important.
Yes, very, very clear, where there's no room for, assumptions or sharing of lack of information, for example. It needs to be really clear, concise communication, and also like regular communication. There's no point, checking in with the team once a month, because by the time you reach your next check-in, there's so much that has happened in that past time. So you need to have regular check-ins, and also just, going through when you have a check-in with someone from your team, also just providing, positive feedback. I think that's also a really important thing. I think that what happens, not only in our industry, but in many, many occupations, is that there's a lot of negative feedback. You get called in and you're being reprimanded for something, but you don't ever feel like you get called in and they've actually acknowledged something you've done right. So it's really important that if you are part of a team, or if you are a head of a team, for example, to really just ensure that you are encouraging your staff or your colleagues or your team members, and, highlight the things that they've done right. I think there's so much that we can take from animal training when we think about it. Focus on the positive things and focus on the behaviors that you want. But for some reason, when we apply it to, humans, we start focusing on all the negative things. And of course, the negative things are going to be the things that, show up more for us, because that's where we, of course, putting our attention.
Also, that's how we've grown up. In our life, we have always been told, don't do that, don't do this, not rather do that, or I like the way you do this. It's always, don't touch that, don't do that. You're not going to get a sucker if you do that. It's all negative stuff. So it's embedded in our brain to always do that. And it's very difficult for a person to come out of that when it was something you grew up with. But as trainers, we've learned to do it with our animals. We just have to kind of do that switch and try and change it with our colleagues and our team members. And I have to agree, like, if you don't communicate or sit down regularly to discuss points and decisions and those type of things, it's going to get lost in the bulk of the work that's happening. Because face it, we do a lot of stuff throughout the month. And now you're sitting to kind of cover everything.
Crazy amounts.
Exactly. And how do you now do that in a short period of time? Because you're like, okay, we've only got 30 minutes to do this meeting. Now everybody has to rush through what they have to say, and you never really cover exactly the important points or parts, because everybody wants to say what they need to say, and they don't always have the time to say it in. So it's all rushed. And we also, I find that if it's a rushed thing, everybody stops listening to each other, because they are just looking at the time going, oh, we've got 5 minutes. I hope Jack's going to finish talking now so that we can go. You're not listening to each other. So if you're having more regular meetings, short meetings, but more regularly, they will remain short and everybody will be connected and listening to each other. And it's good to support each other. Support each other and make sure that the other person understands you've been supported, and be genuine in that support. It can sometimes come across that you're just saying, yeah, I support you, but it's coming across as if you're
just doing it to tick the box, basically.
That's correct.
Yeah. I think it's amazing. Even what you just said now, we've grown up with this idea of, or this kind of method of, don't do that, don't do this. But even when you said it now, by just changing a word from don't do this to rather let's do it this way, it's got a completely different tone to it and a completely different approach. And I think it's also really important, if you are a manager or, you're working in a team, to also just be very careful on, how you speak to other people. What words are you using? How can it be sometimes perceived? You can't always be responsible for how someone's going to perceive something you've said, but you can be extra cautious when you are speaking, and ensuring that there isn't, as I mentioned, any room for miscommunication or misunderstanding. And it goes back to that concise and clear communication.
Yeah, and I think on that it's important to say that even if somebody does perceive what you say to be maybe not how you put it across, you need to be open to allow them to, or let them talk to you about it and explain their feeling about how they perceived it, and not feel uncomfortable or get your back up about it and feel, because that breaks up the team, because now this one person has perceived it the wrong way. Everybody else is now, because everybody talks, so now they're also thinking, oh yeah, maybe he did say it like that, and maybe that's why clear communication. If there's a problem, let me know. Okay, let me be a little bit more clear in what I was saying and how I explained it. And it goes very well in groups when you're trying to explain. I can take this back to bird training. You're trying to explain how we want to break down this behavior to build up the behavior. And there are certain trainers that are training the bird, and they've all got to be on the same page. If they're not on the same page, that bird's going to be so confused as to what is going on. So each trainer needs to know their role and their way. And if they misunderstand something and start training a different type of behavior because they didn't understand, you've got a lot of work ahead of you, because you're going to end up the next day, the other person is training and they're like, why is this bird doing this behavior? So break down everything you say and try and be concise about it, and make sure that everybody's involved in the decision making. I think that's another very important topic there. Is decision making in a team is everybody. There's no I in team. We always say
yes, that. Yeah.
The team needs to chat about the decisions. You're not all going to be 100% in on it and concise on it and be like, yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. But at least you can chat about it and get a resolution as to the way forward.
For sure. And I think, also another misconception is that in a team environment, a debate or how would I put this, with negative kind of focus around a topic, or if there's tension around a topic, it doesn't always mean that it's a bad thing. There needs to sometimes be that debate when we're talking about animal welfare, when we're talking about looking after animals and their well-being, because everyone is going to have a different opinion. Everyone is going to think of different ways to approach or problem solve something relating to the problem, for example. So I think it's really important to have those conversations when they do come up, and also just get everybody involved in that conversation, because you might find a better way of doing things. And then also everybody in the team feels that they've been heard. And often when those tensions do come up around a topic, it's often because there is actually an underlying issue there, and it's causing a little bit of conflict, but it's causing conflict for a reason. And sometimes conflict actually isn't bad. It's actually good to have a bit of conflict here and there, because it means that you can ultimately improve on what you're doing.
Yeah, there's always room for improvement, and conflict does open up a lot of walls that get put up. It's sort of, if there's no conflict in a team, then I would question, is everything okay? Because you're obviously not talking, because there's always going to be conflict in some means or somehow. So having conflict is healthy. It's like being in a relationship. You're not going to be in a relationship and, oh, we never fight. Yeah, you will. And it's healthy to fight, because it opens up different, understandings, and it makes you learn. Also when you start in a team as a new person, you don't know those team members. And it's important to learn, and you learn through others, and you learn through things that happen and how people react to certain things. Because there's many times when you'll be in a team and somebody will say something and you'll be like, did they mean it like that? And then you chat to another person, oh, they normally say it like that, but this is, and you just learn how people say things. Not everybody's going to change the way they do things. So learning how the team works, how the dynamic is all part and parcel of the whole process of being in a team. And I find it exciting to be in a team and learn how different people experience different things, and how they process different, situations. And every person plays that role. You find it out later once, let's say, for example, once you've done a project together and it's accomplished and everybody's like, wow, we accomplished this. You found out that now everybody in that played a certain role in one of their high strengths. It's so important in a team to find, and important for the manager to find or the team leader to find that person's strength, because we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. And in a team, somebody's strength might be someone's weakness and somebody's weakness might be someone's strength. So working on that and ensuring that everybody is, following their strengths and others are helping the other ones with their weaknesses will build a much stronger team in the long run.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, just also thinking on that, you only, if you've got a project, for example, you can only pull on the strengths and, of the team members if you have that clear and concise goal that is communicated. So it's also really important that if you are heading up a team, you're essentially in charge of their direction, that you have very clear goals, you have clear objectives, and like Ryan, like you mentioned, breaking it down into those smaller steps so it's more manageable, it's more understandable, and it's easier to visualize where we are, where we need to be. It's so easy for us to give someone, oh, well, here's where we need to be in a year, versus if you get feedback of, oh, well, this is where we need to get to in the next 3 days or the next week. It's such a easier and much better approach, because you actually feel like you're actually achieving something. If you're working towards a goal for a whole year, but you don't ever feel like you're getting there, it can be really, really frustrating, not only for, you as a individual team member, but the whole team actually.
Definitely. Yeah. It's very, very, very important because, if you think about it, take this for example. You want to build a house and you have a piece of land and you look at that piece of land and you have to now picture what the house looks like. I find that really difficult because as much as I'd love to be able to, in my mind, picture this beautiful house on this piece of land, if it's not in front of me, I struggle to understand it. And I think that's exactly how it is when you're pitching a point or a focus to the team. Break it down into small pieces. This is what it's going to look like when this piece of land is cleared. Okay, that kind of looks okay. This is what it's going to look like when we put the foundation down. We're going to have this. That's a little bit closer for me to be able to see and see it growing rather than trying to envision the complete finished item, if that makes sense. So break it down into those smaller approximations like we do with training. You never go and try and get the bird to do the full behavior. You break it down into small things, and it's going to be the same in the team. They've got to see the little processes and see those little accomplishments, which also help with feeling better about what you're doing, because a distant big end of the project can feel very far away. But if you've got small approximations to get to, you feel like you're getting closer quicker.
Yeah, I think that will help a lot. I mean, I know for myself that works really, really well for me, because it helps me to know that I'm getting somewhere, and then that also then motivates me to then continue, because you've already come this far and you've got quite a way to go, but that you've actually gotten somewhere, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I think reflection is also really important. Like reflecting on what you've done, because we always forget about the accomplishments as a team we've done in the past. It's really important to look back and go, wow, guys, look what we have done before. And this is where we're heading. But we always just go, we're looking at the heading. That's where we want to be. But what about all the accomplishments, how we've got to where we are right now? We forget about that. And sometimes, and I've done this in teams before, when we sit down and we discuss and look back at the accomplishments that we've made in the past, it makes you so much more positive as a team to move forward and accomplish the extra things and move forward and accomplish the more projects that you're trying to do, because of the positive reinforcement you're getting from the things that you've discovered you've done well and accomplished in the past.
100%. Celebrate those wins is really, really important. And then also, I think just acknowledging, everybody has a different work style as well. I know One of my colleagues, for example, really enjoys listening to music while he works. I am the opposite. I prefer a quiet space. So also just in that team environment, you have a lot of, different personalities coming into that small space that you all have to try and work together. So also just realizing that everybody works differently, and then trying to accommodate all those different work styles can also sometimes be a little bit tricky. But I think it's really important to just remember that you all have shared goals and you all are working towards the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that it's one of those things that we all forget about, and that is that everybody's an individual. Not everybody's a robot. And it's important to know that we've all got our own perks and, or let's say, pros and cons. And that's not going to change. We just have to work around it. It's like the strengths and weaknesses. Just work around it, learn how each person functions and where they function in their best capacity. And that's going to make it easier to work together to find the end goal working as a team. The other thing that tends to happen with teams is you get people that will take on things and try and make it their own, and they get sort of an ego about it, and then everybody gets left behind. And it can happen because you get people that are like that. But then you've got to figure out a way to bring everybody together. And I think that's the important part of a team leader or a person leading that team, is to bring everybody back together and say, hey, let's focus on getting this all done as a team, because we're all trying to follow the same path and the same goal to accomplish this. And we need every single person in this team to accomplish that, not just that one person who's like forging along and moving head first and leaving everybody else behind.
Yeah, I think we need to put a little, disclaimer line at the bottom there that says, just, especially in the animal industry, please just leave your ego at home. It's not all about you. And I think one thing that you said there really well, something that I can relate to, is whenever there is those conflicts, and unfortunately it does happen where, someone is focused on a task and really driven to complete that task, but it's not really for the team's benefit, it's for them. I think it's really important to just bring out the facts. For me, it's always, we are here for the animals, and that's what our job entails, and that's what the fact is. So whenever there's, conflict in decision making, if we can't come to an agreement, it's very easy to just get us back on track by saying, we're here for the animals. What's the best thing for them? For this particular animal.
Animal comes first.
Exactly. How do we achieve this, or how do we fix this problem? And quite often you can get an answer by asking the question, what is best for the animal that we're talking about? And immediately your question is answered without having to consider all the human side effects and the egos that come, with working with animals as well.
Yep. Well, this has been quite a topic, and I think there's a lot of people that will relate to the topic, and have been in situations where they've had to deal with stuff. So I think it's an awesome opportunity to open it up to people who are listening. Any listeners want to get involved in the podcast in some way, here's an awesome opportunity to. You can let us know about situations that you've been in and how you've worked through them, which could help other people. One of the reasons why we have our podcast, and also why we sit on an amazing committee on the South African Keepers Association, is that we want to help people in our industry better themselves. And I think this is one way to do that, is to learn from others and how they deal with situations. Not every situation is going to be exactly the same, but if you've got an idea of how people have worked through situations, you can figure out how you can negotiate around that situation. So I think it's a good opportunity for people to now say, hey, so I've had a problem before, and this is how we dealt with that problem, and this is how we worked around it, and this is how we accomplished this as a team. So if you are interested in getting involved with the podcast and, helping other keepers that are listening, other animal care personnel, pop us an email, pop us a message on Instagram or Facebook, and tell us about it. And then we can
On
read
the
your
socials.
messages. Yeah. We can read your messages out on our next or other podcast and just discuss what you guys had to say about it. And then we can make a discussion about it, because I think these things are important. A lot of the things that we discuss, people may be like, oh, I don't know if I feel comfortable about talking about it. But we sometimes have to talk about things to make sure that everybody understands that everybody's going through the same thing. We're not all, experiencing something. It's like, oh, I don't know if anybody else is experiencing this. When you're working together with people, it's so important to know that you're not the only one out there experiencing it. And I think I learned that quite quickly. And that was when I started going to conferences. I realized that other people have experienced the same concerns I've experienced. And that made me a better trainer, because I learned from their experiences how to deal with certain experiences. And it goes with anything and everything that we do in our industry. It's about learning from other people, and the experiences they have could make our lives and our animals' lives so much better.
I think also what's really important to touch on what you just said is, it's important to also understand that you might be in a situation and you think you're alone in it, but actually you're not. I haven't gotten to use any fish analogies here, so I'm going to say we're all in the same boat. There might be somebody else that's experiencing the exact same thing you're experiencing, having the same, difficulties working in a team, or having the same issues they're finding with reporting to higher management or things like that. And it's really important to understand that you're not alone. There are other people that are experiencing the same thing, and there's lots of ways out there that can help you to manage what you're experiencing. So I think it's really important to understand that also some conversations are tough to have. There are conversations that aren't easy to have. And then also, if you are in a team and you are really struggling because you feel like you're not getting the support from a certain team member, or maybe you're feeling like you're not getting the support from your entire team, also maybe just realize that maybe the team's feeling the same way, and maybe they just need somebody to actually make them feel that they are supported. And maybe that's a role that you can then take on as an individual and step up and step into that role, because you can kind of see what your team needs. It doesn't mean that you have to be the leader of a team or a manager to bring everybody together. You can definitely do that all on your own if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, I like that idea. Stepping up, and if you can fill a niche, fill it. I think that's a great way to look at it. And if you're not feeling 100% okay with chatting to us maybe about it on the podcast or sending us messages, there's another way you could potentially get involved in conversations and chat to other like-minded people in our industry. And that is becoming a member of SACA, which is the South African Animal Keepers Association, which we both sit on the committee, which we've mentioned before in some of our other episodes. And you can do this by logging onto the website of SACA, which we'll put down at the bottom of the description of our podcast, and go there and have a look about it, and then become a member. And as being part of a member, you get access to all the other members by being added onto a WhatsApp group. Follow SACA on Facebook and Instagram, and start up a conversation and ask some people about their situations that they've experienced, or if they're going through any challenges with training or any challenges with teamwork, or maybe something's happening at your facility and they're building and you don't know what to do about the animals and how they're experiencing the building around there or moving things around. Chat to each other and see how other places have dealt with those situations. I can guarantee you now, there are people that have experienced similar experiences to you, and their guidance of how they dealt with it will really help you better the experience you're having and the experience your animals are having.
Yes, I think, as we've established, this is a really can be a really difficult topic, but it is one that's really, really important, because, you can't work in an animal environment without that human component. So they kind of go hand in hand. I know some of us will sometimes feel we really wish we could just be with the animals all the time. But there is that human component to it. Yeah, you just have to own it and understand that it's there and you need to do with it what you can. So yeah, that's my advice.
There's always going to be humans involved in our career in this industry. Either if you're working with people as colleagues in your team, in your facility, or you're working with public, you're always going to have to interact with people. So as much as we may say that we are not people or people, we are animal people, we still have to work with with those
people. Those two-legged, creatures that walk around.
Exactly. Any final thoughts, Ayrton, before we close off?
I think, again, I just want to emphasize, be the person that your team needs you to be. I think, I know sometimes it's not very easy working in a team environment, and we've discussed, all the different things in this episode. So just understand that maybe there is opportunity for you to also just step up and take ownership and be the positive human that your particular team needs. And that can also take a lot, but I think when you do it and you start seeing what a positive impact you can have as one individual, it really is very humbling and also just really, I want to say, really kind of special, because you realize that you have a massive impact not only on the animals that you work with, but also the people that you work with. Yeah, that's something very important, especially in our industry.
Yeah, I think my final thought kind of links in there, and that is be supportive. Support your colleagues. They need it. You need it. You need their support. They need your support. And then also just be clear with your communication. Communication, I have learned over the years, is very, very important. I don't think I would be doing a podcast if I didn't think that communicating was important. But I found how important this type of communication is and how important it is to communicate with each other all the time and just be clear about what you're trying to communicate. I still make mistakes. I'm still human, but I do my best at making sure that I'm clear and I communicate all the intentions or everything that's supposed to be communicated. So I think that's really important. So I think on closing, we hope that you have enjoyed listening to this episode and learned something, or maybe you're thinking about something now that we've brought this topic up. Please make sure that you like this and comment and let us know your thoughts. And again, you can get us on our social media platforms. You can send us an email. The email address is animal.talk201@gmail.com. And remember, we're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can find us there. And please go on to our YouTube.
Everywhere.
We are everywhere. Go on our YouTube, subscribe, like, comment. When you like on our YouTube, it pretty much changes everything because it sends that podcast out to a whole lot of people. So if you go on and you subscribe and you like and you comment, it starts disseminating our podcast further and further out so more people get to hear about it. And that's exactly what we want. We don't want it to just be a small niche amount of people. We want everybody to hear and learn as much as they possibly can. So that's the way you can definitely help the podcast out, is just like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, keep safe, and animals are our passion.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. I really hope that you've learned something from this podcast. And remember that our quality of care is their quality of life. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We could have a podcast secret sound.
Yes, we could. Guys, what's happening?
What is that sound? It's Ryan's cat.
Clawing itself underneath the bed. You've got to get it directly right.